It's a big focus for Republicans as they investigate President Biden's mental fitness while in office. The use of the Autopen.
The Autopen, I think, is maybe one of the biggest scandals that we've had in 50 to 100 years. This is a tremendous scandal.
It's been used for decades in different administrations, including by President Trump, but he says the Autopen is intended to sign letters and less important things, not for what he says the Biden staff used it for.
They're sick people, and I guarantee you he knew nothing about what he was signing. I guarantee it.
Congressman Brandon Gill tells Fox.
That is a major scandal. And listen, President Trump is exactly right. There were things done, legal things, pardons done in Joe Biden's name that he didn't know about, and that's wrong.
Gill is a Republican on the House Oversight Committee investigating allegations the Biden White House covered up a cognitive decline. The former president denies all that and tells the New York Times he was involved in every decision, including the pardons and clemencies granted at the end of his presidency.
The Autopen in and of itself isn't unusual. Presidents use them for things other than signing letters.
Marc Thiessen is a Fox News contributor who was chief speechwriter for former President George W. Bush, currently a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute.
It would be legal to sign a law using an Autopen as long as the president directed it. But when I was in the White House with President Bush, he wanted to make clear that very often that he was making the decision himself. I remember there was once Congress passed a continuing resolution to get to keep the government funded, and he was at a summit in Asia, and they literally put a young staffer on a plane with the law in his carry-on baggage and flew him to Asia so that Bush could sign it in person because he didn't want any doubt to exist over the authenticity of his signature. In fact, some of us were wondering if his plane got delayed or his baggage got lost and that the government would stop functioning because of that. But he could have signed it with an Autopen. There was a legal analysis done that said that you can use the Autopen to do it. In the case of Biden, the issue is not so much the Autopen, but the fact that he was so cognitively impaired that was he really authorizing the use of the Autopen, or were aides making decisions and implementing them with the Autopen? It's the nexus between the Autopen and his mental decline that is really the issue here.
Now, former President Biden, he talked to the New York Times. He says he approved all the pardons. He says Republicans and President Trump are lying. They're liars about all of this. And he says he didn't use his signature for everyone. There's a lot of people involved, but he says he was involved in every step of the process. Do you believe that he was involved at all, or do you think he's partially? Do you take him for his word?
No, I don't believe that he was involved in all of them. And I think he said that he didn't authorize each and every name.
Right.
Because there were so many. And so Jeff Zients, the chief of staff, indicated which one should be Autopen. Jeff Zients has no authority to do that. I remember during the Bush administration at one point, I used to work for Don Rumsfeld in the Pentagon, and he told me a story that Andy Card, the chief of staff, called him to convey an order from the president to carry out. And Rumsfeld told him, Andy, you're not in the chain of command. You can't order me to do anything. If the president wants to order me to do something, he needs to pick up the phone and call me directly, because the chief of staff, and Rumsfeld had been the White House chief of staff, so he knew what the authority of the chief of staff was. He said, you're not in the chain of command. Well, it's the same thing with an Autopen. The chief of staff has no authority to issue a pardon. Only the president can do that. So the president needs to give the order to say, this individual is getting a pardon and you can use the Autopen to put my signature on it. The chief of staff doesn't get to make those decisions. So I think all of those pardons that he ordered, where Biden admits he didn't go over the names and identify who they were. Those are all in legal question right now.
Well, supposedly he approved of all the different criteria that someone who would get a pardon or a clemency would have to meet. So
that's not how it works, because every case is different, and there could be extenuating circumstances. That's like saying every shoplifter gets treated a certain way. Well, no, if you're a shoplifter, but you also had other crimes, or there were aggravating circumstances, or somebody got injured during the shoplift. There's every individual crime has its own unique set of circumstances. You can't pardon categories of people. You got to pardon individuals. and the president has to approve each and every one of them. And the fact that he was doing these mass pardons is in and of itself problematic. But, it's not clear that he was aware who he was pardoning, and they were using his Autopen to do it.
So as the last few months of the administration were continuing, all these pardons and clemencies came at the end of his presidency. He was no longer running again for re-election. He had dropped out in July. Do you think that, I know Republicans claim that Biden wasn't running the country. Do you think that's true? Do you think there was a big mass cover-up here?
Well, lots of presidents do things at the very end of their presidency. You're president until January 20th at 11:59. And so you have the authority to do whatever it is you want to do up until the moment that the new president takes the oath of office. But again, here's the nexus between these actions that were taken on Biden's behalf and his cognitive abilities. It was absolutely clear to most Americans that he was not that he was cognitively impaired, and it's really, I don't think we've had a situation since Edith Wilson was essentially acting president when Woodrow Wilson had a stroke, that we've had such a crisis and a cover up of the president's cognitive impairment while he was in office, and it's a huge constitutional crisis.
Democrats have said, look, this is a distraction. We have to move on. He's no longer president. Why are we wasting our time on this?
Because they lied to us. They all endorsed him to run for another 4 years, and he was not capable of doing that, and we need to know whether the Democrats were pushing a candidate who they knew he couldn't serve for 4 more months, much less 4 more years. And they lied to the American people about it. They told us that he was doing, mental gymnastics in the Oval Office and running circles around his aides, and it's absolutely clear he was not. And so, this whole nothing to see here, it's all over, and all the rest of it is absurd. Anybody we need to know who was engaged in the cover up, because those people should be shunned from Washington for the rest of their lives in senior government positions, especially some of them who probably want to run for office themselves one day or serve in government again. And then the other part that we really need to get into is the media, because, all the Jake Tappers of the world and all the people who participated in this cover up are still out there. Reporting the news and saying nothing to see here. I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, you did. And your credibility is on the line. So we need to get to the bottom of what happened. And just because Biden is gone and we now have, we're making America great again, doesn't mean we should not look back and see what happened under the previous administration.
There are all the allegations of the people in the White House covering up and helping the president. There are also people who believe that they were the ones who maybe sandbagged him by calling. We'd never had a presidential debate in June. That had never occurred before. Are you in the camp that believe that they put him out there on purpose in case he did have a bad night like he did, and they could pivot to somebody else like they did with Vice President Harris?
Well, if they were worried about that, then they would have had the debate in January. I mean, it was too late. They waited so long that there was no time to have a competitive process to choose the nominee, and so there was no way to get past Kamala Harris as the nominee, who most people thought was not capable of carrying on the mission.
Well, maybe they did think that she was, and they waited till June because they knew that would be the only option.
Well, maybe Harris's people felt that way, but I don't think there were a lot of people who thought that she should be the nominee. She was inevitable because once Biden endorsed her, and two, the party of identity politics was never going to kick to curb the first black woman vice president, who would have been the first black woman president if she had won, unless it was done by the voters. It was put to the voters. The only way she could have been denied the nomination is if there was a competitive process. But, these people are saying their campaign is democracy is on the ballot, but we're running somebody who didn't get a single vote. Yeah. It's kind of ironic that's your approach. I mean, I think this was just a major screw up. I think a lot of Democrats, they drank the Kool-Aid. If you go back and watch Scarface, the line is the drug dealer's motto is "Don't get high on your own supply." Well, a lot of Democrats were getting high on their own supply. They were feeding us this idea that Biden was really okay. And then they were very surprised when they found out he wasn't.
The use of the Autopen to sign off on one particular pardon has Senator Rand Paul's attention. It's a preemptive shield for Dr. Anthony Fauci, the former White House COVID advisor.
Dr. Fauci, do you still support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, with all due respect, you are entirely and completely incorrect.
Senator Paul and Dr. Fauci clashed in numerous hearings over COVID's origins and U.S. funding of research in China.
Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans.
Right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly.
Now, yesterday, Senator Paul told Fox Business,
An Autopen pardon, preemptive pardon, there's a lot to go on here. The only way we could actually get this into court is hopefully the DOJ would do their job, indict Anthony Fauci for the felony of lying to Congress, and then take it to court.
Of course, Dr. Fauci denies he lied.
It's unlikely to succeed, particularly in the case of someone like Fauci, who was high profile and who Biden claims he knew and gave the order to do it. It's more likely in case of these mass clemencies where he admits he didn't even know the names of the people who are doing it, where I think there's a little bit more at risk. But I think unfortunately Fauci is. I'm glad that Rand Paul is pursuing it, and he should try, but it's unlikely to succeed.
But you think that some of the clemencies could potentially be revisited? I know President Trump wants that.
Well, it's certainly if Biden has admitted that he gave broad categories, but he didn't look at the names in some of these cases. That just doesn't. That's not what the Constitution says. Your aides don't have the power to say, Joe Smith, you're pardoned. Only the president can do that. And so it would be one thing if they said broad categories and they brought him the things and he put his signature on it and looked at the paper as he was doing it, even if he didn't examine it very carefully. There's nothing in the law says you have to have a particular deliberative process, but you have to be aware of who you're pardoning. They can't pardon people in your name. And so in cases where he's admitted he didn't know the names of the people, I think that there's an argument to be made.
Do you think
that they're illegitimate?
Do you think the Justice Department will attempt to undo some of them and take it maybe even all the way to the Supreme Court if they need to?
I think they might, and I think they should.
Marc Thiessen, former chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Great to talk to you. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.